Welcome back, everyone. Now, this afternoon, we have a real treat in store for you. I'm sure you will all be aware of the gentleman on the bottom of our screen. There it is, the one and only Mr. Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK, of course, and a very dear friend of this show. And above Ben there is a gentleman called Tony Mack, who you will not have seen on this channel before, but today you're going to see him, believe me, and you're going to hear from him. First of all, good afternoon, Ben. Good afternoon, Tony.
Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me both this afternoon. Now, Tony, first of all, give us a brief introduction of yourself and perhaps more importantly for the viewers, how you and Ben know each other.
Okay, absolutely. I'm what they call a reluctant politician. I only got into politics a few years ago. And I decided after watching Starmer and Sunak going over this dispatch box, to my dismay, I thought I've got to do something about this. So I looked around for a party to join a couple of years ago. And I'm a Brexit voter. I was a member of the Brexit Party years ago. And I thought, you know, the closest party to my alignment, my political alignment, is Reform UK. We were virtually, you know, they were a much smaller party then. So I decided to join Reform UK, and I live in Clacton, as you know, Paul, and they asked me if I'd be interested in standing. So I said I'll consider it, etc., etc. And you know, I'm of the opinion that if not you, then who? So I put my money where my mouth is. I can, you know, always defend my convictions, etc. So I decided, yeah, okay, I will. You know, I have to try and do something to keep this country exactly what it was when I grew up, the opportunities, and you know, for my children and my grandchildren. And it was time I'd done something. I was semi-retired at the time, which is, you know, I'm busier now than I've ever been, but that's another story. So I decided to join Reform UK, and very quickly I got active. I built Reform UK in Clacton, and then they asked me to become the spokesman, which I did, and then they asked me if I would like to run, and I became the official candidate, the MP parliamentary candidate for Clacton. And during that time, I was going and helping, you know, other candidates and with their campaigns, etc., etc. And I'd met Ben at a speech over in, I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was over in Hertfordshire somewhere. And me and my wife travelled over to meet Ben, and he was giving a speech, and I was it was the first time I'd ever met him. I'd listened to him lots of times, but the first time I'd ever met him. And I was completely bowled over by the man's integrity, his honesty, his personality, and his personal, you know, his very personal chat.
Yeah.
And my wife also was, and she's a very good judge of character. She don't take no prisoners, my old woman. And she said this. I said, yeah, he should really lead the party, because you know he had everything. He had everything. And I remember the first time I met him, and I listened to him, I spoke to him, and we became, you know, I've sought Ben's advice over the years on many things, and he's always been honest with me, he's always been upfront, and he has never steered me wrong. Yeah, and he's always been in my corner, and that's very, very rare in a politician. I've met many politicians, Paul, over the years. You know, I've spoken to many politicians, you know, government ministers, etc., in my former career in London, and you know, there is no one that I've ever met that has the caliber of Ben Habib.
And at this stage, Ben, you are deputy leader, is that right?
Yes.
Certainly. Well, I was deputy leader, was I? Because I became deputy leader in October 2023.
It was before you were deputy leader.
It was before, I think, just when I joined the party. Yeah.
Ben, and obviously you met Tony during those days, so your relationship was basically a personal friendship stroke political relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like so many of my friendships now, it's come through the political sphere, but because where we have the same kind of political philosophy, you know what it's like. You get very close to people who think along the same lines. And so Tony and I became friends, and Tony didn't mention it, but I was very grateful to Tony for coming up to Wellingborough during the by-election and campaigning alongside me, which was the first by-election where Reform actually outdid its national polling. We were polling about 10% in those days, and I got 13% in the poll. And it effectively put Reform on the map. That was in February 2024. And Tony very kindly came up and he helped. And, our friendship grew from there.
Yeah. So we know obviously your commitment and the efforts and the hard work that you put into the party, Ben. But Tony, tell us a little bit more about why we're actually on this as a threesome this afternoon, because I've listened very carefully to some audio that you sent me. For legal reasons, we're not actually going to play the audio itself, but what I can say is that I've listened to it. I'm 100% happy if it's 100% authenticity. And what we definitely can do is we can read a transcript from it. But before we get into that, Tony, tell us how we got here. Why are we doing this today?
Okay, we are doing this today because listen, Nigel Farage, like a lot of people, was somewhat of a political hero of mine. Okay. And my experience of the man is he is untrustworthy, he doesn't keep his word, and he's playing a game. And it's a very dangerous game because we are running out of time in this country to get our country to any semblance of what it should be. We are literally running out of time, and we haven't got time for a circus. We haven't got time for games. And I do not believe, personally, after spending a few days with him, that he is anything other than an egotistical self-publicist. And, it could be Labour, it could be Conservative, it could be Reform. Reform was a convenient vehicle for him to get into Parliament after trying 8 times, as we know. So this is how it started. And, he made me lots of promises. Nobody knew what was not necessarily common knowledge. Is June the 3rd, 2024. Nobody knew in the afternoon that Nigel was taking over the party, which leads me to conclude, and this is only my conclusion, that it was a bit of a coup d'etat, okay? Because even people at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like Isabel Oakeshott, Richard Tice's partner, was putting out tweets saying there is going to be nobody standing down. We don't know what this announcement is. And before Nigel went live to the world.
And can I just add to that? I had no idea either.
No, I don't believe anybody in
Tice, because Nigel Farage put out a tweet in the morning. Do you remember saying emergency press conference this afternoon? And I was the deputy leader then, and I texted Richard Tice repeatedly during the morning saying, "What's going on? What is this emergency press conference?" No answers, no acknowledgement of my text, double blue ticks, but no response. And so I watched the press conference, like everyone else. I, watched it on my computer, and he appointed himself leader without any forewarning or consultation. Just came in, I'm leader. And 2 weeks before that, he'd said he wasn't going to stand in the election. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He said the American election was more important, that there wasn't enough time to actually make an impact in the general. He had so misjudged the mood of the nation on the 24th of May. But between the 24th of May, when the election was going, I think the 23rd of May maybe, and the 3rd of June, he suddenly realized there was a chance of winning a seat. And he therefore came back as leader. And I think, I don't want to steal your thunder, Tony, you tell the story, but he chose your seat, basically, because that was an eminently winnable seat.
So tell us about that, Tony. How did that come about? Because I'm very interested in the contents of the conversations that you sent to me.
Okay, so I'll tell you how it came about. Once I decided that I was all in Reform and I was announced as the Clacton spokesman, I started building a team and taking it very seriously, because I said to Reform, if you give me a year run up, I'll make sure I win this seat. Yeah, because, I will give it my best shot. And by the time Nigel arrived, the previous incumbent, who was a Conservative MP, had already privately conceded. We literally went from 9% to 26% in a year. Okay. So we had already virtually won the seat. And I believe that is why Nigel came back, because he spotted an opportunity. Because as Ben quite rightly says, a couple of weeks before, he was ready to abandon Britain and head over to America, and Britain didn't need him and everything else. But he's the master of political spin, and he doesn't take any responsibility. He'll always spin something and make it someone else's responsibility. Oh, it wasn't my fault, not me, Gov, etc., etc. But, you know, latterly, I've seen that, you know, a lot of media outlets are starting to hold him to account, and he doesn't like it. But I'll hold him to account on this podcast, if you'll allow me, Paul, because it's very important. I've sat on this, and
before you start to go through that, let's just be clear for the viewers. You'd work very hard in Clacton. You'd come to verbal agreements, and to all intents and purposes, it was your understanding that you were going to stand for election in the Clacton area.
Absolutely. Up until he announced on the Monday, up until the Wednesday before, I was organising itineraries. I had the candidacy from the candidate, the electoral officer for Reform, Alan Graves, I believe his name was. I had all that. You know, I was the person who was standing. And after all the work that me and my small team have put in, and you know, I have to credit my team. They worked tirelessly. They all believed in the cause, and they put themselves on the line. And we were open to abuse and everything. And in the end, we turned it round. We started campaigning, common sense. You know, I'm not a political attack dog. I don't denigrate anybody, but I do expect people to be honest and honourable. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But you know, if you can back up your argument, I will consider it. But this is not what happened. So we build this campaign, and we've got everything in place, and then it's coming up to the election, and it looks like we are going to win. Okay. A long time before, I've messaged Nigel personally. I sent him emails, etc. That, you know, I'd like to chat to you. I'd like to meet you. And I know people who know him, and I've never had any contact with him until that day, June the 3rd, where he phoned me 45 minutes before he went live to the world. So we've built it all up, and we've organised. We've got media flowing up on websites. We've really campaigning. We've gone right to the point of literally, you know, fighting a good fight, and we was on the point of virtually being elected.
Is this all at your own expense?
Oh, of course, yes. It's at my expense and my team's expense. Personally, it comes to about £8,500 that I put into it. But you know, I had an agent who done a lot of work, and you know, there was lots of people who done a lot of work for the cause, for Britain. Yeah, because we care.
Sorry, Tony. Ben, if you need to jump in here at all, Ben, if you need to jump in at any time, just hop in, mate, and say what you need to
thank
say.
you. I mean, you know, obviously I know everything Tony is saying, and I think I get involved in the story a little later, don't I, Tony?
You get involved, yes. The next few days, Paul, from June the 3rd, are an absolute, you know, you're going to have to keep up with me because it absolutely takes off. So the week before the weekend, I'm organising the itinerary. Richard Tice is arranging to come down on the battle bus with Nigel Farage to endorse Tony Mack and please vote Reform and everything else. Everything changes on the Friday. It all goes a bit quiet, and I'm thinking something's not right here. Monday, I'm looking and checking. I'm having a meeting with my little team. We're checking all the posts and the media, and this thing about announcement about Nigel Farage's emergency conference. So I spoke to Ben, I spoke to a couple of others, I spoke to the press officer in Reform, Isabel and other people, you know, what's going on? And nobody knew what was going on, okay? Which, as I said, leads me to my own conclusions. And they are my conclusions, Paul. I'm not saying it's definite, but that's my conclusions. Mm-hmm. You know, as a reasonable man and someone in psychology, you rule out, you know, you rule out different scenarios, and you come to the most obvious scenario. The law of thought says that that's what it is. And so Nigel goes on there and he says, I'm taking over Reform UK, I'm this and that, and I'm standing in Clacton. So, and we are, you know, I received a phone call 40 minutes before, and he said, hello, is that Tony? So I said, yes. He said, oh, this is Nigel. I said, hello, Nigel. Okay, nice to hear from you. I said, he said, I've decided to come back into politics. I said, oh, good. He said, I've decided to stand in Clacton. And he said, Peter Harris tells me you're okay with that. And I said, Nigel, I'm decidedly not okay with that. I said, the time for you to come back into politics was before we all put our lives on the line to build this. I said, and I'm not okay with that. And he said, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. He said, but, you know, I said, well, that's fine. I said, you do what you've got to do and I'll do what I have to do. And then he goes live, and then we understand the detail. Now, in this time when he's live, I'm getting all sorts of phone calls from the hierarchy of Reform UK. Tony, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? please be with us, please stand with us and all that. And I said, look, I ain't being funny. I said, but I don't work like that. I'm accountable. I'm accountable to my community. I'm accountable to my friends. I don't work like that. It was all a bit clandestine. It was all a bit rotten, if you understand what I mean. So there are, people are hierarchy in the party. A lot of them have now since left, are pleading with me, like, not to throw my toys out the pram, don't do this, don't do that. And I said, look, I'm not doing anything. I'm considering it. And then this chap, Peter Harris, who's quite an integral figure in the story, but nobody will know him because he's a tendering district councillor. He phones me and he says, Nigel wants you on board. Nigel, he wants you to give him a statement of support. Now, by then, you can understand, I was a little bit stressed, a little bit miffed. Everything had turned upside down. And I was sitting with my little team and a couple of my political backers. And I said, look, if Nigel wants to ask me something, get him to phone me himself. And this is how it happened. I said, I'm not talking to you. I said, because, as far as I'm concerned, who are you? You're not even a reformer. Yeah, it wasn't even part of the party. Yeah. So I said, I will speak to Nigel as the new leader of the party. So Nigel phones me back. And he says to me, hello, Tony. He said, I understand you're not happy. He said, and I said, well, that's an understatement, but carry on. He said, I want you with me. I want a statement of support. I want you to come out and support me. I want you with me. He said, what can I do to make that happen? I said, well, what do you suggest? And first of all, this is what he said. And I'm going to, if you don't mind, because I transcribe a lot for my job, because sometimes I'm in session and I have to transcribe to listen back to what patients have said, etc., etc. So the first thing he said to me is, we will pay you back. Do you mind if I swear, Paul?
No, you can swear whatever you
right,
can say,
okay.
whatever you like. I mean,
right.
What I want you to do is I want you to repeat Nigel's words verbatim,
right.
really.
Okay, I will repeat these words verbatim.
What I heard on the recording between you two.
Yeah. He said, the tape starts, right, and the transcript starts we're talking about reimbursement, and he said, I will pay you back, you bet, every fucking penny, is what he says, right? And he says, oh, excuse me, I'm swearing. I said, no, it's all right, you can swear, etc. Right. So if we do that, this is Nigel now, if we do that, I promise you that, plus when it comes to the local elections next year, the county elections next year, all those elections, I will back you 100% and come out and knock on doors for you. But I said to him, to be honest with you, Nigel, I'm not sure I want to be a councillor. Yeah. He said, well, what do you want? I said, well, he said, do I want to be part of the campaign? I said, at this point, Nigel, I ain't being funny, the campaign is my campaign. So he said, okay. He said, can you join the campaign? I said, yeah, of course I can join the campaign. I said, but, I don't want to come into the campaign. I said, we have built this campaign. So I want to be part of the campaign, but not just part of the campaign. I want to be head of the campaign because it's my campaign. And he said, that's fine. Absolutely. We will make that happen. So then he says, and afterwards, would you want afterwards to be part of the constituency team in the office, keeping it going, etc.? And I said, I ain't being funny, Nigel. I said, but, I don't want to be part of anything. I want to be the head of the constituency team because me and you both know you're taken over the party. You're not going to be in Clacton. Clacton's not going to have a voice, etc. And he says to me, and I'll quote verbatim, okay, mate, well, listen, you've got the local intel. If I win this thing, and I want to win this thing, and I says to him, well, we'll make sure that you do win this thing. We're almost there, etc., etc. Fine. If I win this thing, you will have a job absolutely at the top of that, a salaried job as well. So the conversation goes on, etc., about, there was a few defamation allegations against me about being anti-Semitic, etc. And I said, I want you to put out a statement of support for me, that I'm none of those things because it can be proved that I'm not. And he said, okay, we'll do that tomorrow. And he said, I'll make a public statement of that tomorrow. And then he says to me about, do I want a campaign? Do I run a constituency office? And I say to him, look, I said, one thing that's very important to me is that my little team that I've built, and it's only 3 or 4 people, I said, they've literally put their lives, their reputations, their finances, and their time on the line for the last year. I said, if I'm coming to become your campaign manager, etc., and I would like to bring some of my own team, because at this point, I already had an inkling that there was something going on behind the scenes, okay, with some of the tendering district councillors. So he says, yeah, and I said, look, these people literally put their life, and he said, no, of course, listen, teams matter, and I understand that. So I said to him, right, am I with you there tomorrow to when you make the announcement and come down to Clacton? And he says, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we go on, and then basically he says, I will have me and my team. This is his words. He said, right, okay, yeah, we'll sort it. Wonderful, wonderful. I speak to Peter. He says that me and my team will have a position in the campaign. I will be the head of the campaign, and I will have a salaried job in the campaign after he wins the election. Okay. And the idea was, which we discussed, was that I would be the link between him and Clacton, so Clacton has a voice, and I could choose some of my team. So the upshot was that he will pay back every penny we've spent campaigning, which is it's not an insignificant amount, Paul, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the bare minimum you would expect, you know. And then he says to me, "I'm a man of my word. I'm an honourable man. Everything I said to you will happen." I said, "Okay, we'll sort it. We'll sort it," is what he says. Okay, we'll sort it. We'll sort it. So after that, I meets him when it comes to announce his big thing in Clacton. And I goes into an ante room with him because he had to take my appointment to have his candidacy. I mean, the thing is, Paul, it was so, how it happened, as I said, you'll have to bear with me. I ended up signing his candidacy papers, giving him my appointment at the electoral office so he could put in his papers, etc. And I said, and he's walking around in the council town hall and all that. And I said to him, "Nigel, do you mind if I have a word?" And he said, "No, absolutely." I said, "Can we go into an ante room?" So we goes into an ante room, and I said to him again, he said, "Tony, is everything okay?" So I said, "Absolutely, Nigel, no problem." I said, "I just want to make sure everything you said to me in our conversation that you stand by." And he stood up, oh, no word of a lie. This is the first time I've met him in person. He stood up, he stuck his hand out, he shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and he said, "I am a man of my word. Everything I said will happen." And I said, "Okay, that's fine for me. Let's go out and do this thing." So he went out and announced his candidacy and everything else to all these people and everything else. And I spent the day with him, and I watched him and a couple of other things. And I felt that something wasn't right. I just felt that something wasn't right. And within 2 days, I was bounced out the party. I mean, there's a lot of background to that. But within 2 days, I was bounced out of the party. But during my suspicions that something wasn't right, I travelled up to see a good friend of mine in politics. And I basically run a few things past our dear Ben. And he gave me the honest truth. And he was absolutely 100% right. And whilst I was talking to Ben, in fact, Nigel phoned me. And he said, "Oh, Tony," he said, I understand you're trying to get hold of me," because I'd sent him a few texts about some of the things that he promised would happen had not happened in the previous 48 hours. So I sent him a text, and he's just come back from when they went to celebrate in France the soldiers, you know, the VE Day.
Yeah.
So he said, "Oh, Tony, I understand you've been trying to call me, trying to get hold of me." I said, "Yeah." I said, Did you read the email and the messages I sent to you, Nigel?" And he said to me, "Oh, Tony," he said, "I don't read those things. I have people to read those for me. What were they about?" And I said, "Thank you very much. Goodbye." Put the phone down on him. That was the polite version of what I said, because I knew I'd been bounced out of the party by then. And Ben was absolutely right what he said to me. He gave me some sage advice. And throughout all of this, Ben is the only person who knows me, who has supported me politically. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. I become what is called, Paul, a political Prometheus. I was hung out to dry by Reform UK. Now, because of how it all unfolded, because of the promises and everything else, and because of the literal, I'm going to say this, now I invite Nigel to come after me or disparage or deny any of these allegations because I can prove them, okay? And you know,
I would say I have heard the takes myself.
Yeah, I can prove, and not only that, there was 7 people in the room at the time, you know, good people, honourable people with positions in society.
Of the things that he promised you, including the money back that you put into the campaign, how many of those promises were fulfilled?
None. Zero. Absolutely none.
Did you ever get the money back?
Nope. What I did was, after he was elected, I put in a bill an itemised bill and everything else. That was in July, just after the election. My agent put in his bill. Everybody's putting. I mean, other people are suing him. I'm not going down that road, okay? Because when I decided, as a matter of honour, that I knew. Listen, I knew I wasn't going to win an election, but it was such an important point of principle that this man is literally deceiving. If he can't keep his word to me, and I'm just an ordinary guy, Paul, all right? And he says, I'm for the ordinary man and his ordinary man and all this rubbish that he says. If he can't keep his word to me, how's he going to keep his word to the country? How is he going to?
Similar promises, well, not similar, but, in some ways, similar promises were made to me before the election, not by Nigel himself, but by representatives, none of which came through. Ben, at this stage, what are your observations and what advice had you already given Tony ahead of this situation?
So I got involved after Nigel Farage had reneged on all the promises he'd made to Tony. First of all, I'd just like to say what a brilliant suggestion it was of Tony's to Farage to say, you can be the candidate if that's what you wish, but I want to run the office because I am Mr. Clacton. I can effectively do what you are unable to do as a constituency MP because I know the people, I know the area. I can be your eyes and ears and I can feed you the information you need. What a brilliant proposition that was. Tony saw immediately that if Farage won, he wouldn't have the time for it.
Yeah.
But instead of accepting in good faith Tony's proposal, he did accept it, but in bad faith. Instead of accepting it in good faith and forging a relationship with an individual who's so clearly loyal, Tony oozes loyalty and commitment. Instead of doing that, I think later on, Tony, or perhaps at more or less the same time, he brought in his own people.
Yes, he did.
Basically threw you aside. And it was when Tony was thrown aside that Tony called me and he said, I want to come and see you. I was in Wellingborough, fighting my campaign. And I said, of course, it's a hell of a long drive, Tony. I think it's 4 hours each way, isn't it? And Tony came up and we had a 3 or 4 hour long meeting during which Farage called Tony. By this stage, I'd already realized Farage was a problem. I'd realized some time ago Farage was a problem. And it didn't surprise me that he treated Tony the way Tony had been treated. And I received a very upset Tony. I think Farage, 3rd of June was a Monday, and I think you came to see me on a Thursday.
That's correct.
We spent 3 or 4 hours in a hotel, in the restaurant actually of the hotel, which was empty, and we chatted in private. And it was a very distressed Tony Mack. The other thing that Tony hasn't mentioned is that the very day that Farage went to Clacton on the 4th of June to tell all of Clacton that he was standing there, he forgot your name.
Oh, he did, yes.
He didn't even remember your name.
Yeah.
And that absolutely reveals the falsity of the promises he was making. Because if he had a commitment to you, he would at the very least know who the hell you are.
Absolutely.
And anyway, my basic advice to Tony was there's nothing that can be done. Bide your time. Let's keep calm. Stand in Clacton if you like. It's going to be a difficult job because you'll be up against Reform. You've put Reform on the map. You can stand as an independent and have a crack. And I think you did stand, didn't you, Tony?
I did, yes.
It's the devil's own job to stand as an independent when you spent a year building the brand for Reform.
Yep.
It's an absolute travesty the way Tony was treated. And I listened to those tapes and all of it was all chummy and upbeat. But the central point, I think, is the one that Tony's already made, that if he can move in to a position that's been created by someone who's worked solidly for the party, make promises, make solemn promises that he then ditches within 24 hours, how can you trust this man with running the country? Tony was the first example of Farage setting someone aside when he got into the party. Since he became leader, he has set dozens of people aside in the way that he treated Tony. His entry into frontline politics again was of a Machiavellian, Caesarian, old Romanesque, backstabbing, political machinations. That was his entry into frontline politics again. And all he's done ever since then is more and more and more of the same. This man is highly, highly untrustworthy.
Tony, I've got to say that you're one of many former reformers that have come to me over the last year or so with similar stories where they've basically been dumped, the grassroots have been thrown out with the rubbish. But you're the first one that's actually brought me clear evidence of such. I'm not someone that can just go on a podcast and repeat accusations without some kind of evidence. You presented me that evidence in the most perfect fashion. So how are you left now feeling about Reform and Nigel Farage, and politically, how are you moving forward as Tony Mack?
Right, okay, so nobody is more disappointed than I am. As I said at the beginning, I'd never met Nigel, but I admired him from afar and I respected him, okay? But he turns out to be not the person that we all think he is. So there's an old adage that says never meet your heroes, and I can concur with that. So what happened was, after deciding to stand as a point of principle against him as the real reformer, shall we say, an independent, the real reformer, because I cottoned on quite quickly what was going on. As far as I was concerned, Nigel Farage has always wanted to be, this is conjecture, this is only my opinion, Nigel Farage has always wanted to be accepted by the Conservative Party and be Conservative Party leader. And I believe that Reform UK was just a vehicle for him to do that. So once all that comes out and I decide to stand against him and everything else, I decided that, and I spoke to Ben, I decided to step back from politics because I literally committed political suicide by standing against him. I knew I wasn't going to win, but I paid my deposit to make a point of principle, Paul. Because if we don't have the courage of our convictions and we can just bend and sway to popular opinion, we are going to get nowhere. So I was very disappointed because Reform, what we created and what we built, was on track to do what it said it was going to do on the tin. Now I know that it's not going to do what it says on the tin. I don't even know what Reform is anymore. It's a mishmash of Labour and Liberal rejects. I don't even know what it stands for anymore. And it seemed, if you watch closely, it seems what they stand for one week changes the next week, and it's always political. And I can't believe anything, knowing what I know, my personal experience and everything else, I literally can't believe anything they say now. So after I politically retired or committed political suicide, it was like step back because my family, I went from hero to zero in a week, Paul. I was getting messages from all around the world, oh, you well done, you stood aside for Nigel and all that sort of thing. And then when I put my papers in at the last minute to stand against him, I received death threats from all around the world. And my wife and children and grandchildren, they see all this stuff and it takes its toll. Yeah, it does take its toll. And it was a very...
Can I just... I want to testify to that because Tony was distraught. You put your heart and soul into standing in that seat. Yeah. You had, as I say, solemn promises made to you, and then you were tossed aside. And I think people watching may not appreciate the emotional turmoil that kind of event can create, because you believe so strongly in something, you know it's necessary, and then you see it just being ripped apart in front of you. And it's shocking. It's shocking.
So, answering your question earlier, you don't know what Reform is anymore. I mean, I call it revert now. I mean, just to more former Tories, councillors joining. I mean, look, for me, I don't even think about Reform these days. I'm focused solely on Advance UK and what Ben's doing. Well, Ben, this is our future.
Yeah.
And I'm not just, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in what Ben's doing and Ben as a leader and Advance UK as a party. I wouldn't be here. I haven't got time to waste. And as you said right at the very beginning, we haven't got a moment to spare in saving our country.
Yeah. There was only one way I was ever going to get back into politics. And, people who know me know this. because as I say, Paul, I'm a psychotherapist. I work with people, etc. I help people move on from one thing from another. But I do care passionately and deeply about our country and my children, my grandchildren, and I care passionately about where this country is going, and it's not going in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. So, once I did what I had to do and stood against him for my own reasons, for my own personal reasons, to be able to look myself in the mirror, I decided that was it. Okay, I'm out of politics. And there would only have been one way that I ever came back into politics, and that was if a man called Ben Habib started a party. And I've been besieging him like thousands of others for months and months and months and months and months. And to my absolute eternal gratitude, the man has put his money where his mouth is, he's put his life on the line, and he's gone ahead and done it. Now, you can see the testament to that is within 10 or 11 weeks, we're at 38,000 members. Yeah. Within 10 or 11, 12 weeks. I mean, that is incredible. That is how much the man is held in high regard and esteem. And that was the only way I would have ever got back into politics. And when Ben started the party, Ben knew that I was straight away, I was going to be there. And what's more, Paul, my wife, and as I said, she takes no prisoners, good East End girl. She's never really been into politics. Advance UK is the first party she has ever joined. And that tells me that, we are on the right track. It may take us a bit of time, but we are on the right track. We are the real deal. We will do exactly what it says on the tin. We're not interested in being part of the establishment. We're not interested in sucking up to celebrities or minor celebrities. We are interested in saving this country. That's what we're interested in, and that's what we are all in it for.
100%. I think you reflect the views and opinions of hopefully all of my viewers. I mean, our viewers have been joining Ben's party in their droves, in their thousands. But we still do get a bit of pushback from the reformers who feel, look, they're in a good position and they're our only hope. And my answer to them is, look, Advance are what reform should have been, and
absolutely
I think they are, and they are not. And the reason I wanted you to come on and tell your story today was not to diss the dirt on Nigel. I've got nothing against the man. I've never met him. But it was for the public to know the truth. It's important that the public know the truth, and the man that they're potentially electing to lead our country back into the place where it needs to be. I don't think he's got it in him. I don't think he has the right intentions in many respects. I believe that Ben does, and I believe that it's vital that every single person out there that is a member of Reform or is supporting Reform takes a very close, serious look at what you said today, and a very close and serious look at Ben and Advance UK. That's my view. Everyone knows that's my view. Ben, anything to add to what Tony's had to say there? Oh, by the way, Ben, I will say this. I've got a lot of ears on the ground down in Clacton. It's a wonderful area full of magnificent people, as proper as you can. If you don't mind me using an old London saying, as proper as they get, right? And Ben, you are so popular down there. It is unbelievable. I think, Tony, you'll attest to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when I was in Reform UK, Ben had a lot of popularity. Some of my closest advocates who used to go out and campaign and deliver leaflets and things like that, they all idolised Ben because what they could see, what we could all see. Ben is the man with measured conviction, ability, and it just oozes from him. Yeah, this is not a eulogy about Ben. This is tribute. This is credit where credit's due. Yeah. And so he was a popular figure, particularly with ladies of a certain age, if you don't mind me saying, Ben, in Clacton. And of course, he's always
of any age. I'm saying
he's always been. Yeah.
That's it then, Ben. I'm not coming down to Clacton. I don't want to play second fiddle.
But he's always been held in the highest regard. He really has. And you're right, Paul.
Tony, thank you. And thank you. That's so kind of you to say all of that. And of course, it equally applies the other way around. I hope people can see instantly the integrity you've got and your commitment and your loyalties. These are qualities that are absolutely essential in the people who we're going to have to put forward to save this country. Critical qualities, I'm afraid, absent in the leader of Reform. And I just want to reiterate what you said, Paul. I didn't come on this show just to bash Farage, but it is important that people understand what Farage is. It is vital before they put a cross next to his name again and put it in a ballot box. They need to know the man, what he is.
Is there anything else that you guys want to cover?
So I'd like to say I'm delighted and very grateful to Tony for coming back into politics. He will find the advanced UK experience markedly different to the one that he experienced with Reform. And I hope that Tony and I will be working very closely together with him representing Clacton in the next general election. And I won't, at the last minute, step you aside and say, I'm coming in. I'm going to stand against Farage. Though that would be quite good fun.
Let me just interject there. Now, this is the difference. If we did get to a pinnacle over the next couple of years, and it did transpire the same situation with Reform, that we campaigned and we got to the point, this is the difference. If Ben said to me, Tony, I want to stand in Clacton, I would have no hesitation in standing aside. That's the difference in the caliber of the people we are talking about. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I know that Britain will be safe in people like Ben's hands. And I know that Britain, Ben used the word Machiavellian, and that's an absolute wonderful description, a very polite description, but a wonderful description of the person that we are talking about. And we are running out of time. We can't afford to mess about. It's not a game. Yeah. It really isn't a game. Now, I'm a man of a certain age. I'm in my third age now. I'm sort of I was semi-retired, but life is busier than it's ever been. But, what are my children going to do? What are my grandchildren going to do? I want them to grow up in a free, democratic, equal country, with opportunities that we all had, Paul, that we took for granted. Now, the two-tier justice, the lack of sovereignty, the lack of autonomy, the very threat to freedoms that we were discussing earlier on. It's happening so quick, the demographic change and everything else.
Well, just between me and Tony alone, there are 13 little reasons why we do what we do. Bless the little hearts, they are our world. But before we go, Tony, I just want to say that any doubters out there, any critics watching this that say, oh, what I see here is a guy that he's, just annoyed because he didn't get the chance to win his seat in Clacton, etc. No, what I would say is I see a guy in front of me that was prepared to do the right thing for not only for Clacton and the people of Clacton, but also for the country. Step aside, let the bigger man with the bigger name come in and do the job. But that man was lied to. All the promises were broken and he didn't even get his money refunded.
There's £8,500 owed to me still outstanding. And there's money owed to my agent. There's money owed to other people. They are not going to get a penny. I know they're not going to get a penny. That other people have decided to go through the courts. I don't particularly want to do that, Paul, because that's not my style. We can't sort it out as gentlemen. That's fine. But at the end of the day, let me ask you a question. Say, for example, you're doing some work for someone and, be it gardening or building or whatever it is, and you're providing a service and doing something for someone. And, say a painter and decorator comes into my house at the moment. We've just moved into a new house and it was being done up and all that. And they've done £8,500 worth of work. And I turned around and said to them, thanks, mate, but you're not getting paid. Yeah? Thanks, mate. You've done all the work and everything else. And I appreciate it. I promised to pay you, but now I'm thinking, you know what? Yeah, and there's no reason for it, Paul, because this man is a multimillionaire. Yeah. Now, it's not about money for me, and it's not about bitterness, and it's not about resentment. Because people who know me know that I am not a resentful person. It's about what's right. And that's the difference.
It's about principle.
Can I reiterate one point as well? Just to emphasize what Tony said. On the 2nd of June, before Farage came back, Tony was polling 26% in Clacton. It was his seat.
Yeah.
I think Farage got 28% in the general election. 2% more than you were polling.
Yeah.
That was your seat.
I know.
Anyway, it's history. Advance UK is here. We are going to stand by our principles. We're going to save this country, and we're going to do it through people like yourself, Tony, and you.
And you, Ben. And you, Paul, as well.
Yeah.
And you.
We are the true People's Party. We are the party that people have yearned for and needed for decades. And at last, we're here. It sends a shiver down my spine when I say those words, because, and I honestly mean that. All those wonderful people out there that have been dumped by the political class over the years, at last, we've all got home. No, we won't, and we have Ben Habib to thank for that. Ben, thank you most sincerely.
No. Thank you. Thank all of you, everyone who's joined, all nearly 38,000 members. Thank you. And we've got to get to 1 million members, Paul, by the next general election. I mean it. I know it's a big number, but if we get to 1 million members, we will walk the next general election.
Yep.
So let's get to a position where there's no doubt whatsoever that we will win. Let's concentrate on getting that membership up. Let's take Clacton. Tony.
Yep.
Let's make it the capital of Advance UK's establishing itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Later on this week, you will find, Paul, just to interject, later on this week, you will find advanceukclacton.co.uk will go live, and then we'll go from there.
Fantastic. And to all the wonderful people down there in Clacton, look, guys, girls, you know who has your back. You know that your current MP barely, if ever, visits the bloody place. Join the political revolution. It's running across the bottom of the screen there. Join Advance UK today at the link below. And watch us take off. Watch us go. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. And if every single one of you now watching this and believes in what we're saying, if you haven't already joined, if you have, just get your next door neighbour, your family, your friends, get them to join. Let's get to that 1 million membership mark as soon as we possibly can. And like Ben says, win the next general election. Let's do it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.